Settle in, dear listener, and let yourself grow still. Allow the quiet of this moment to wrap around you like a soft, familiar blanket. Tonight, we journey together far back through the corridors of time, to a world of flickering oil lamps, starlit temples, and reed-covered riverbanks, where the oldest voices of human wisdom first learned to speak. Close your eyes gently, breathe slowly, and let the ancient world come to you. In the warm, humid marshlands of what we now call southern Iraq, where the great Tigris and Euphrates rivers once braided themselves into a broad, green delta, something quietly extraordinary began to happen. Approximately 5,000 years ago, in that fertile, mist-covered landscape, a people called the Sumerians pressed small, wedge-shaped marks into soft, wet clay. With those deliberate, careful impressions, they gave the world its very first writing system, a form of script we know today as cuneiform. These were not idle scratches. They were the first threads of a vast tapestry of knowledge that would stretch across thousands of years. It would be tempting to imagine that the earliest tablets contained only the practical concerns of everyday life. And indeed, some did record grain inventories, livestock tallies, and measures of barley. But nestled among those mundane accounts were records of a far more astonishing nature. Detailed observations of the heavens, accounts of divine communications, descriptions of vast, recurring cycles that the Sumerians believed would one day reshape the entire world. These were not casual notes. They were among the most deliberate, carefully preserved documents in all of human history. The Sumerians understood themselves to occupy a special position in the cosmos. They saw their civilization as a kind of threshold, a living bridge between the heavens above and the earth below. Their priests, known by various ancient titles, functioned simultaneously as religious leaders, practicing astronomers, and meticulous recorders of what they believed to be direct transmissions from the Anunnaki, their great pantheon of sky deities. In temple archives scattered across magnificent ancient cities, including Uruk and Eridu, thousands of clay tablets reveal a people profoundly committed to one overarching endeavor. The careful, systematic documentation of patterns they perceived operating in both the movements of celestial bodies and the unfolding of earthly events. What makes these early records so remarkable, even today, is not just their age, but their methodology. The Sumerian scribes did not simply note down remarkable occurrences and move on. They recorded not only what happened, but precisely when it happened, under which configuration of stars it occurred, and what divine messages, if any, appeared to accompany the event. This was not superstition. It was something far closer to science. Unlike civilizations that recorded isolated visions or sporadic divine encounters, the Sumerians treated prophetic knowledge as a form of data, something to be gathered with care, cross-referenced with patience, and stored securely for future consultation. Their temple archives contained thousands upon thousands of tablets, organized methodically by celestial event, by seasonal rhythm, by the reign of each king. They developed intricate mathematical frameworks for tracking the movements of planets and designed layered calendars that accounted simultaneously for both lunar and solar cycles. The sophistication of this astronomical understanding, achieved without any technology beyond the naked eye and the discipline of continuous observation, remains one of the most quietly breathtaking achievements in the story of human civilization. Consider for a moment what it truly meant to be a scribe in ancient Sumer. From early childhood, selected students entered the Adoba, the tablet house, where they would spend many years learning to press the stylus into clay with exactly the right angle and pressure to produce clean, legible wedge shapes. They practiced on small tablets, smoothing the clay flat again and again until the marks were precise and consistent. They memorized long lists of signs, each carrying multiple meanings depending on context, and they committed to memory the accumulated astronomical observations of generations before them. The Aduba was not merely a school in the modern sense. It was a living repository, a place where the knowledge of the cosmos was stored not only in clay, but in the minds and hands of those who would carry it forward. Teachers passed observations to students who became teachers themselves, each generation adding new layers of precision to the vast body of recorded wisdom. The quiet discipline of these ancient schoolrooms, the smell of fresh clay, the soft scraping of the reed stylus, the careful recitation of stellar positions and omen texts represented a form of devotion as serious and sustained as any prayer. Their temple archives contained thousands upon thousands of tablets, organized methodically by celestial event, by seasonal rhythm, by the reign of each king. They developed intricate mathematical frameworks for tracking the movements of planets and designed layered calendars that accounted simultaneously for both lunar and solar cycles. The sophistication of this astronomical understanding, achieved without any technology beyond the naked eye, and the discipline of continuous observation, remains one of the most quietly breathtaking achievements in the story of human civilization. Drifting gently now a little further into this ancient world, we encounter one of history's most puzzling and thought-provoking documents. A cuneiform text known as the Sumerian King List, compiled around 2100 BC, but drawing on traditions that reach back much further still into the mists of prehistory. This document catalogues the reigns of Sumerian rulers beginning, according to its own framing, at the very dawn of civilization itself. And it divides all of history into two distinct phases: the time before a great flood and the time that came after. The antediluvian section of the King List, that portion describing the era before the flood, records 8 kings who ruled across 5 ancient cities. Their reigns, as presented in the document, last for extraordinary lengths of time. Alim of Eridu reportedly governed for 28,800 years. Dumuzid of Bad Tibira held power for an astonishing 36,000 years. Modern scholars have generally treated these figures as mythological exaggeration, as poetic inflation meant to convey the sheer antiquity of kingly authority. But this dismissal may be too hasty, and here is why. The enormous numbers in the King List are not random. They follow precise mathematical patterns rooted in the Sumerian base 60 numerical system, the same elegant framework that gave us the 60-minute hour and the 360-degree circle that we still use today. More significantly, the durations described in the antediluvian section correspond closely to vast astronomical cycles that the Sumerians tracked with remarkable accuracy. Among these is the precession of the equinoxes, a slow, majestic wobble of the Earth's rotational axis that takes approximately 25,920 years to complete a single full cycle. These enormous reigns appear to be embedded with reference to this cosmic rhythm, suggesting that the Sumerians understood kingship not as a purely human or political institution, but as a manifestation of cosmic order playing out across unimaginably vast spans of time. Their concept of Namlugal described rulership as a divine principle that descended from the heavens and expressed itself through earthly representatives during specific cosmic periods. The impossibly long reigns attributed to antediluvian kings may not represent individual human lifetimes at all, but rather entire cosmic ages during which certain celestial principles held sway over the affairs of humanity as a whole. This interpretation aligns beautifully with Sumerian astronomical texts that described vast cycles of celestial influence, each lasting thousands of years, each shaping human civilization in ways both profound and measurable. After the flood, as the King List narrates it, kingship descended from heaven once more, but this time with dramatically shortened reigns, measured in mere decades or centuries rather than in millennia. The Sumerians apparently understood this transition as a fundamental shift in the nature of cosmic order itself, a movement from an age when divine or semi-divine beings governed human affairs directly to an era in which mortals served as temporary vessels for celestial authority. The mathematical relationships between the pre-flood and post-flood reign lengths suggest that the Sumerians believed themselves to be living within an accelerated cosmic cycle, one in which transformations that once unfolded across thousands of years were now compressing themselves into the span of a single human lifetime. What is perhaps most striking about the King List, when one sits with it quietly and allows its implications to settle, is not the enormity of the numbers themselves, but the coherence underlying them. These are not the inflated boasts of proud rulers seeking to impress posterity with the grandeur of their lineages. They are mathematical statements, precise and internally consistent, embedded within a cosmological framework that understood human governance as an expression of celestial timing. Each reign in the antediluvian section corresponds not to the life of a single mortal individual, however exceptional, but to the duration of a specific cosmic condition, a period during which a particular quality of divine influence expressed itself through earthly affairs. When we understand the King List in this light, it ceases to be a puzzling collection of mythological exaggerations and becomes instead something far more compelling. A carefully encoded record of how the Sumerians perceived the relationship between astronomical time and the history of civilization. The document is, in a very real sense, a map of cosmic ages expressed in the only language available to its authors, the language of kingship and governance that their civilization understood most deeply. Let the breath slow now. Let the evening deepen around you. High above the plains of ancient Mesopotamia, atop the great stepped towers called ziggurats, Sumerian priests spent countless clear nights gazing upward, watching, recording, and calculating. These were not casual observers, indulging in idle curiosity. They were humanity's first professional astronomers, committed to a systematic scientific endeavor that was passed from generation to generation within the disciplined environment of temple schools. The archives they maintained contained detailed tables tracking the movements of Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, planetary observations of an accuracy that would not be equaled again in the Western world until the age of the Renaissance, nearly 2,000 years later. The priests did not record planetary positions alone. They meticulously documented the correlations they observed between celestial events and earthly developments, floods and droughts, the rise and collapse of dynasties, periods of social upheaval and cultural transformation, abundant harvests and devastating famines. A remarkable group of tablets, known as the Mulapin series, dating in their current form to around 1000 BC, but preserving far older traditions, organized the stars into 3 great celestial bands, each associated with one of the supreme deities, Anu, Enlil, and Ea. Each band governed specific months of the year and was understood to influence different aspects of life upon the earth. The Sumerian priests paid particular attention to the heliacal risings of stars, those moments when a particular star becomes visible again just before dawn, after a period of invisibility beneath the horizon. These events were carefully correlated with seasonal shifts, agricultural rhythms, and political developments. The result was a form of knowledge that modern practitioners might recognize as mundane astrology, the study of how celestial events shape the collective experience of human societies rather than merely the fate of individuals. The Sumerians documented, for instance, how the retrograde motion of Mars through specific constellations appeared to coincide with outbreaks of warfare and political instability, while the position of Jupiter seemed to correlate with the abundance of crops and the prosperity of trade. The precision of these observed correlations suggests something extraordinary. The Sumerian priests appear to have possessed knowledge of cosmic cycles operating across timescales far longer than any single human life, or even any single dynasty. They understood that certain astronomical configurations repeated at predictable intervals, bringing similar influences to bear upon human civilization each time they returned. This understanding formed the foundation of their prophetic tradition. They were not, in their own self-conception, guessing at the future. They were reading a pattern, vast and ancient, encoded in the movements of the heavens themselves. The physical environment in which this astronomical work was carried out deserves a moment of quiet contemplation. The Ziggurat, that enormous stepped structure rising above the flat Mesopotamian plain, was not merely a temple or a monument to divine power. It was, among other things, an instrument. Its upper platform placed the observing priest above the haze and dust that lingered near the ground, offering a cleaner, clearer view of the horizon where stars rose and set. The very geometry of the Ziggurat was understood to mirror the cosmic mountain at the center of the world, the axis around which the heavens turned. Standing at its summit on a clear night, with the warm wind moving across the plain, and the river glinting far below in the moonlight, a Sumerian astronomer would have felt himself genuinely positioned between two worlds, standing at the meeting point of earth and sky, of human time and cosmic time. The tablets he carried with him, containing the accumulated observations of his predecessors stretching back across generations, were not merely reference documents. They were his inheritance and his responsibility, the thread connecting him to all who had stood in this same place before him, watching the same stars move in their patient, ancient circles. Among the great mythological narratives that emerged from this civilization, the Enuma Elish, Babylon's magnificent creation epic, preserves much older Sumerian thought in its account of how the cosmos came to be. The text opens in a time before heaven and earth existed, when only the mingled primordial waters, called Apsu and Tiamat, existed in an undifferentiated unity. From their union came the first generation of divine beings, whose restless energy and constant activity disturbed the original silence. Apsu, wishing to reclaim that primordial quiet, planned to eliminate the younger gods. But wisdom prevailed against him, and it was instead Apsu who was slain. Tiamat, consumed with grief and fury at her consort's destruction, gave birth to an army of chaos demons and monstrous creatures. Serpents with deadly fangs, dragons whose veins carried venom in place of blood, and storm beings carrying weapons capable of inspiring terror at a single glance. Tiamat herself transformed into a vast and terrible dragon. Within her body, she carried the Tablets of Destiny, the sacred objects believed to hold authority over the fundamental laws of the cosmos. One by one, the younger gods refused to face her, until at last Marduk, the great storm god, offered to champion them, demanding in return supreme authority over all the divine assembly. The great cosmic battle that followed was not merely a drama of strength overcoming strength. It was a drama of wisdom and timing. Marduk ensnared Tiamat in a net woven from the four winds. He drove the evil wind into her open mouth, inflating her enormous body. Then, at precisely the right moment, he pierced her heart with a single arrow. From Tiamat's body, Marduk fashioned the heavens and the earth, establishing the cosmic order that would govern natural law from that moment forward. The Sumerians understood this narrative not as simple mythology, but as a description of a fundamental cosmic principle. That order does not arise from static perfection, but from the resolution of opposing forces. They observed this same principle at work everywhere around them. In the seasonal cycle of growth and decay, in the flooding and recession of the great rivers, in the alternation of day and night, in the rise and fall of empires. The tablets of destiny that Tiamat had carried within her represented the Sumerian belief that the deepest laws governing reality were not permanent and unchanging, but capable of being transformed during great cosmic conflicts and transitions. It is worth lingering here for a moment in the atmosphere of this ancient narrative. The Enuma Elish was not a text reserved for scholars and priests alone. It was recited publicly during the great New Year festival, the Akitu, celebrated each spring in Babylon with ceremonies lasting several days. As the priests chanted the words of the epic in the great temple of Marduk, the entire population of the city would have understood that they were participating in something cosmic in scale. The recitation of the creation story was not merely a remembrance of mythological events long past. It was understood as an active renewal of cosmic order, a way of aligning the present moment with the creative power that had established the universe at its beginning. By speaking the words of creation aloud, the community participated in sustaining the very order those words described. Language and cosmos were understood as deeply intertwined. The careful, correct performance of sacred narrative was itself a form of cosmic maintenance, a way of ensuring that the forces of chaos, which the story showed were never permanently defeated, remained contained within their proper boundaries for another cycle of the year. The cyclical nature of this primordial struggle appears throughout Sumerian literature and astronomical texts. The Sumerians understood that the forces of chaos, while defeated, were never permanently destroyed. Instead, they were seen as accumulating strength during periods of stability and order, gradually building toward an inevitable new confrontation with established cosmic arrangements. This understanding shaped their entire approach to prophecy. They were not simply predicting isolated future events. They were tracking the slow accumulation of cosmic tensions that would inevitably require resolution through periods of upheaval and renewal. They were reading the long, patient breath of the universe itself. The systematic recording of prophetic knowledge that emerged from these astronomical observations found its most sophisticated expression in the vast temple archives of Babylonian and Assyrian civilization. Among the remarkable prophetic texts preserved in those archives, the prophecy of Marduk stands as one of the most significant examples of ancient Mesopotamian predictive literature. It presents detailed descriptions of political upheavals, natural disasters, and social transformations tied with great precision to specific astronomical events. The prophecy of Marduk, preserved in multiple copies dating from the 12th through the 7th centuries BC, presents itself as the words of Babylon's patron deity, delivered through temple priests during times of crisis. At its surface level, the text describes Marduk's temporary exile from Babylon as a consequence of the people's sins, followed by his eventual return and the restoration of proper cosmic order. But beneath this religious narrative lies a sophisticated system for predicting political and social change based on observable celestial phenomena. The prophecy divides the future into distinct periods, each characterized by specific astronomical configurations and their corresponding earthly manifestations. The exile of Marduk is described as lasting 21 years, a period that corresponds precisely to a recognizable astronomical cycle, the synodic cycle of Mars and Saturn, which is the interval between their successive conjunctions as observed from Earth. During this period of divine exile, the prophecy anticipates widespread social disorder, foreign invasions, economic collapse, and natural disasters. The descriptions of these calamities were not invented from imagination. They reflect patterns that Mesopotamian astronomers had observed correlating with specific planetary configurations over centuries upon centuries of careful record-keeping. The return of Marduk is marked in the prophecy by equally specific astronomical markers: the heliacal rising of certain constellations, the appearance of particular planetary conjunctions, and the occurrence of solar eclipses within designated months of the Mesopotamian calendar. These celestial events, in the text's understanding, signal the arrival of a new cosmic age characterized by just governance, agricultural abundance, and the restoration of proper religious practice. The transition is not described as a sudden thunderclap of change, but as a gradual, multi-year process during which new astronomical influences slowly establish their dominance over the affairs of the world. Archaeological excavations at ancient sites have uncovered extensive temple archives containing hundreds of similar prophetic texts. Many of these preserve traditions far older than the physical tablets themselves. These omen collections reveal that Mesopotamian priests maintained extraordinarily detailed databases correlating celestial events with historical occurrences across vast stretches of time. They organized this knowledge according to what they called simanu, appointed times, moments when cosmic influences reach critical thresholds and trigger significant changes in the life of human civilization. The concept of simanu represents one of the most philosophically sophisticated aspects of Mesopotamian thinking about time. Unlike a purely linear view of events as isolated and sequential occurrences, simanu describes predetermined moments when cosmic forces converge to open windows of transformation. These appointed times were understood to operate according to the same mathematical principles that govern celestial mechanics, making them, in principle, predictable through careful astronomical calculation. Mesopotamian texts describe simanu occurring across multiple scales of time, from brief periods of days or weeks to vast cosmic ages spanning thousands of years, during which the fundamental principles governing reality itself undergo profound reorganization. Calculating simanu required precise knowledge of multiple astronomical cycles and their complex interactions with one another. Mesopotamian astronomers tracked the movements of all visible planets, the slow drift of precession, the 18.6-year cycle of lunar standstills, and various eclipse cycles with a level of accuracy that commands admiration even today. They understood that the most significant appointed times occurred when several of these independent cycles converged, creating periods of intensified cosmic influence. These convergences are what modern astronomy calls great conjunctions. Rare alignments of multiple planets occurring at intervals of centuries or even millennia. Texts from the Great Library of Ashurbanipal describe simanu as moments when the tablets of destiny are rewritten, invoking the ancient Mesopotamian belief that the fundamental laws of cosmic reality undergo periodic revision. During these appointed times, the principles governing nature, human society, and spiritual experience become temporarily fluid, open to transformation. The tablets suggest that those individuals and civilizations possessing sufficient knowledge and proper preparation can influence the direction of these changes, while those who remain ignorant of cosmic timing become helpless in the face of forces whose nature they do not understand. The library of Ashurbanipal itself deserves a quiet moment of appreciation. Assembled in the 7th century BC, in the great city of Nineveh, it contained more than 30,000 individual clay tablets, representing the most comprehensive collection of knowledge yet assembled in the ancient world. Ashurbanipal, the Assyrian king who ordered its creation, sent scribes throughout the entire breadth of the Mesopotamian world with instructions to copy any tablet they could find. Omen series, astronomical tables, medical texts, mythological narratives, royal chronicles, mathematical exercises, dictionaries of the Sumerian language, already ancient and partially forgotten by his time. The library was not a symbol of personal vanity or political power alone. Ashurbanipal appears to have genuinely understood that these texts contained something irreplaceable, accumulated knowledge of cosmic patterns that had taken centuries to gather, and that could be lost forever if the tablets housing it were allowed to scatter and decay. The library was destroyed when Nineveh fell in 612 BC, its roof collapsing in fire, but the clay tablets survived the flames and the rubble remarkably well, baked harder by the heat that was intended to destroy them. Thousands of years later, archaeologists would uncover them, and the knowledge encoded in their surfaces would speak again across the millennia. The most extensive collection of astronomical omens to survive from ancient Mesopotamia appears in the Enuma Anu Enlil series, a compilation of over 7,000 individual tablets containing observations and predictions based on celestial phenomena. Assembled over more than a millennium of continuous observation, this monumental work represents humanity's first comprehensive attempt to systematize the relationship between cosmic events and earthly affairs. Its name is drawn from its opening words, invoking the three supreme gods, whose celestial domains encompass all observable astronomical phenomena. The Enuma Anu Enlil tablets organize omens into carefully defined categories: lunar phenomena, solar observations, planetary movements, the appearances and disappearances of stars, and unusual atmospheric disturbances. Each category contains hundreds of individual omens, each correlating a specific celestial occurrence with a predicted consequence in the earthly realm. The lunar section alone fills more than 1,500 tablets, documenting in extraordinary detail the relationship between lunar phases, eclipses, and halos, and their predicted effects on political developments, weather, and social conditions. The sheer precision of these correlations demonstrates something important. The Mesopotamian astronomers understood cosmic influences as operating according to discoverable natural laws, not according to the arbitrary whims of unpredictable deities. The planetary omens within the series reveal particularly sophisticated astronomical knowledge. The tablets track the synodic periods of all visible planets with an accuracy approaching modern measurements, and they document with care how the position of each planet relative to specific constellations influences different domains of earthly life. Venus omens concern diplomacy and international relations, reflecting the planet's dual association with Ishtar, goddess of both love and war. Mars omens deal with military conflicts and political instability. Jupiter omens address kingship, law, and social order. And Saturn omens, perhaps most significant of all, concern long-term civilizational changes. The gradual rise and eventual fall of entire cultures across the breadth of historical time. The eclipse omens represent the most dramatic predictions within the entire series. Mesopotamian astronomers had recognized that eclipses occur in predictable cycles, most notably the 223-month Saros cycle that returns similar eclipses at 18-year intervals. But the omen texts reveal knowledge of far longer eclipse cycles, spanning centuries and even millennia. The tablets describe how eclipses occurring in specific months and constellations trigger particular forms of social and political upheaval, with the effects varying according to the duration of the eclipse, its color, and the configuration of planets visible during the event. One of the most striking aspects of the eclipse omens involves what the tablets describe as the darkening of the light of kingship. These texts predict that solar eclipses occurring during specific astronomical conditions herald the end of dynasties and the collapse of established political orders. The omens provide vivid descriptions of the social chaos that follows: armies deserting their positions, officials fleeing their responsibilities, trade networks disintegrating, and entire populations migrating en masse to escape the instability that the cosmic event has announced. The accuracy of these predictions, as verified through comparison with surviving historical records, suggests that the Mesopotamian astronomers had identified genuine and repeatable correlations between eclipse cycles and periods of political transformation. The atmospheric omens within the series document the relationship between unusual weather phenomena and the cosmic influences believed to shape terrestrial conditions. The tablets describe how the appearance of multiple suns or moons, caused by atmospheric refraction under specific conditions, correlated with distinct forms of political division and civil conflict. Unusual cloud formations, particularly those resembling weapons or animal forms, provided additional information about the nature and timing of approaching tensions. Colored halos around celestial bodies, sustained periods of unusual atmospheric clarity or haze, and unexpected shifts in wind direction all carried meaning within this comprehensive observational framework. The inclusion of atmospheric phenomena, alongside strictly astronomical observations, reveals the Mesopotamian understanding of the sky as a unified system in which celestial mechanics and atmospheric conditions were equally valid indicators of cosmic forces operating upon the terrestrial realm. Let your body relax a little more now. Let the weight of the day release itself quietly into the darkness around you. Beyond the famous Epic of Gilgamesh, Mesopotamian literature preserves a rich body of flood narratives that describe cyclical destructions and renewals of human civilization. These accounts, found in Sumerian, Akkadian, and Assyrian texts alike, present flood events not as unique historical catastrophes, but as recurring cosmic phenomena that periodically reshaped the fundamental relationship between humanity and the divine realm. The Sumerian King List references multiple flood events. Other texts describe different flood cycles operating at various temporal scales. Together, they paint a picture of a civilization that understood catastrophic change not as a random accident of fate, but as a built-in feature of cosmic time itself. The Atrahasis epic, preserved in multiple versions spanning more than a millennium, provides the most detailed account of these flood cycles and their cosmic significance. The text describes how human population growth and social development eventually reached levels that disturb cosmic order, prompting the divine assembly to introduce corrective measures. The flood is presented not as a punishment for moral failing in the simple sense, but as a necessary cosmic adjustment, one designed to maintain balance between earthly and celestial realms. The text also describes lesser corrective cycles, involving plague, famine, and warfare, that serve similar regulatory functions on smaller scales of time and intensity. The astronomical references within these flood narratives reveal their deep connection to observable cosmic cycles. The texts describe flood events occurring when specific constellations reach particular positions, when certain planetary configurations appear in the sky, or when multiple astronomical phenomena converge in meaningful combinations. The Sumerian flood story specifies that the Great Deluge began when the constellation of the Crab was in the House of the Moon, a description precise enough that modern astronomers can use it to calculate approximate dates for the events being described. The concept of cyclical renewal embedded within these flood stories reflects the Mesopotamian understanding of cosmic time as something fundamentally different from ordinary human historical time. While humans experience time as a linear progression from past to future, cosmic time in the Mesopotamian framework operates according to vast cycles of creation, flourishing, dissolution, and rebirth. The flood narratives place humanity within these cosmic cycles, suggesting that civilizations rise and fall according to predetermined patterns governed by astronomical influences. Each flood marks the end of one cosmic age and the beginning of another, with survivors carrying forward essential knowledge and cultural wisdom while adapting to the altered conditions of the new era. The Ziusudra narrative, among the oldest preserved flood stories in human literature, describes how the god Enki warned the priest King Ziusudra of the approaching deluge by speaking to him through a reed wall. This unusual detail appears repeatedly in Mesopotamian prophetic literature as a metaphor for the subtle signs through which cosmic forces announce impending changes to those trained to perceive them. The reed wall represents the permeable boundary between the visible and invisible realms, suggesting that those disciplined in reading cosmic signs can perceive approaching transformations before they become manifest in the physical world. Ziusudra's survival depended not merely on constructing a vessel to weather the flood, but on understanding the cosmic timing that would determine precisely when the waters would rise and when they would recede. These flood narratives consistently emphasize the preservation of knowledge across cosmic cycles. Survivors do not simply carry forward their biological lives. They carry libraries, technologies, and spiritual traditions that maintain continuity between one cosmic age and the next. Certain individuals and institutions are described as serving explicitly as bridges between ages, preserving essential wisdom that allows human civilization to rebuild more swiftly and at a higher level after each periodic dissolution. This understanding provides profound insight into how Mesopotamian scribes understood their own vocation. By recording, preserving, and transmitting prophetic and astronomical knowledge, they saw themselves as performing a function of cosmic importance, ensuring that the wisdom of one age would not be lost when the tides of transformation inevitably rose again. The mathematical precision underlying the flood cycle accounts reveals how deeply these narratives were rooted in sophisticated astronomical observation. The intervals between major flood events described in the texts correspond to specific astronomical periods, particularly the precession of the equinoxes and long-term cycles in the characteristics of Earth's orbit. The tablets describe how these immense cosmic cycles influence terrestrial climate patterns, ocean levels, and atmospheric conditions in ways that periodically make existing human settlements uninhabitable. The flood narratives thus represent not merely mythological storytelling of a poetic kind, but something closer to sophisticated long-term climate science, encoded in religious and symbolic language specifically to ensure its preservation across the turbulent centuries. There is something deeply moving, when one considers it quietly, in the idea of knowledge being deliberately encoded in forms designed to outlast the civilizations that produced it. The scribes who wrote these flood narratives understood that stone erodes, wood burns, and even great cities eventually return to dust beneath the accumulating soil of centuries. But a good story, a narrative that carries essential truths within the structure of its telling, moves through time differently. It passes from mouth to mouth, from generation to generation, and even when the specific technical knowledge that originally informed it has been forgotten, the essential pattern of that knowledge survives within the narrative's bones. The choice to embed astronomical calculations within mythological stories was not a sign of primitive thinking, unable to distinguish between science and religion. It was a sophisticated preservation strategy, one that recognized the social and psychological conditions under which knowledge is most reliably transmitted across very long periods of time. We carry forward what we love, what moves us, what touches something deep and persistent in human experience. The Sumerians, it seems, understood this profoundly. Resting a little deeper now, the night is quiet around you. The stars are steady overhead. The Anunnaki, those divine beings whose presence pervades nearly every layer of Mesopotamian literature, occupy a uniquely significant position in this vast cosmic framework. The term itself combines ancient Sumerian elements, meaning, most literally, those of heaven and earth, and that dual character, both celestial and terrestrial, runs through every description of them. Across texts spanning different periods and regions, the Anunnaki are consistently described as a specific group of 50 entities who descended from celestial realms to establish the foundations of human civilization. They are credited with bringing advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, agriculture, and metallurgy to an emerging human world. The Atrahasis epic describes the Anunnaki's arrival on Earth in terms that read less like a divine visitation and more like a planned colonization effort. The text explains that these beings came to extract precious materials and establish agricultural settlements, but found the physical demands of this labor incompatible with their own physiology. Their deliberate decision to create a hybrid workforce by modifying existing hominid species, combining their own biological material with that of creatures already present on the Earth, is presented in the text not as miraculous divine creation, but as a technological process requiring specific knowledge and sophisticated methodology. The tablets describe this genetic modification project in terms that parallel, in striking ways, modern understanding of biological engineering. Multiple attempts and refinements are described. Early versions of the modified beings proved either too primitive for complex tasks or too developmentally advanced for reliable cooperation with their creators. The eventually successful hybrid combined sufficient intelligence for learning complex skills with psychological characteristics that ensured appropriate cooperation. Archaeological evidence from the earliest Sumerian sites appears to support the historical reality of a sudden and dramatic expansion of technological capability during this period, with advanced knowledge of metallurgy, mathematics, precise astronomical calculation, and sophisticated engineering appearing in the record without the gradual developmental sequence that indigenous innovation typically produces. The Sumerian King List documents the transition from direct Anunnaki governance to human rulership, describing a period when kingship descended from heaven and was formally transferred to mortal representatives. This transition is framed not as abandonment, but as a carefully planned delegation of authority, designed to allow the Anunnaki to withdraw from daily administrative responsibilities, while maintaining broader oversight through carefully selected and thoroughly trained human intermediaries. The tablets explain that this system required meticulous selection of human rulers capable of maintaining cosmic order according to divine principles, while also adapting flexibly to changing earthly conditions. The concept of divine councils appears throughout Mesopotamian literature as the central mechanism of cosmic governance. The tablets describe formal deliberative bodies in which the Anunnaki served as permanent members, convening during periods of cosmic transition to determine appropriate responses to changing conditions, both on Earth and throughout the wider celestial realms. These council proceedings, as recorded in the tablets, follow formal protocols that mirror human legal and governmental institutions with striking closeness, suggesting either that human governance systems were consciously modeled on celestial examples, or that both operate according to universal principles of organized decision-making that transcend any particular culture or species. The deliberative nature of these divine councils deserves quiet consideration. The tablets do not describe the Anunnaki as omnipotent beings whose decisions flow effortlessly from absolute authority. Instead, they are depicted as genuine deliberators, beings who gather to examine evidence, weigh competing considerations, argue different positions, and work toward consensus through structured discussion. Individual council members are shown disagreeing with one another. Some advocate for human civilization's preservation during crisis periods, while others argue for more drastic corrective measures. The god Enki appears repeatedly as a voice of protection and patience, arguing for humanity's survival and finding clever ways to warn favored individuals of approaching dangers, even when the council's official decision has gone another way. This portrait of divine governance as a process of genuine negotiation and debate rather than arbitrary decree reflects something profound in the Sumerian worldview. It suggests that even at the highest levels of cosmic organization, order is maintained not through the imposition of absolute power, but through the careful balancing of different perspectives and the patient working out of principles that serve the needs of the whole. The 7 Apkallu represent, in Mesopotamian tradition, perhaps the most significant documented example of systematic knowledge transmission from advanced beings to human civilization. These entities, described in multiple cuneiform sources as possessing a semi-aquatic, fish-like appearance, are said to have emerged from the Persian Gulf, carrying foundational technologies and cultural institutions that established the bedrock for all subsequent human development. The tablets identify each Apkallu individually and describe in detail their specific contributions to human knowledge, creating a remarkably specific record of technological and cultural transmission spanning multiple millennia. Oannes, the first of the Apkallu, appears in texts ranging from the Chronicles of Berossus through multiple Assyrian records. He is consistently described as having instructed humanity in the fundamental elements of civilized life: writing, mathematics, agriculture, urban planning, and the principles of law. The accounts describe a systematic educational program in which Oannes spent daylight hours teaching human students these fundamental skills, then returned to the sea each evening, suggesting a deliberate and structured curriculum rather than casual knowledge sharing. Importantly, the texts emphasize that Oannes provided not just practical techniques, but the underlying conceptual principles that would allow human students to develop these technologies further through their own subsequent innovation and discovery. Subsequent Apkallu introduced increasingly sophisticated layers of knowledge and institutional structure. The second, Adapa, brought advanced astronomical knowledge, enabling the creation of accurate calendars, reliable eclipse prediction, and celestial navigation. The texts suggest his teachings included not only practical observational astronomy, but theoretical knowledge about cosmic cycles and their influence on earthly affairs, establishing the foundation for the sophisticated astronomical tradition that would characterize Mesopotamian civilization for the next 3,000 years. Later, Apkallu contributed knowledge of metallurgy, architecture, medicine and healing, artistic practice, literature, and sacred ceremony. The seventh and final Apkallu, Utuabzu, is described as providing the most advanced teachings of all. knowledge of cosmic mechanics, the principles of interdimensional communication, and the nature of consciousness and spiritual development. The systematic, sequential nature of Apkallu instruction reflects careful planning designed to provide humanity with knowledge in an appropriate order, ensuring that each layer of understanding built upon the previous foundation while preparing students for increasingly advanced concepts. The texts suggest this process required not only intellectual instruction, but the physical and spiritual preparation of students, ensuring that they could safely integrate increasingly powerful knowledge without destabilizing either individual consciousness or collective civilization. When one considers the full arc of Apkallu instruction, a pattern emerges that feels almost like a carefully structured curriculum designed for the very long term. The first transmissions addressed survival and social organization, how to grow food reliably, how to build permanent structures, how to record transactions and agreements in durable form. Only once these foundations were in place did the curriculum advance to the more abstract and demanding subjects of astronomy and mathematics. And only after those disciplines were firmly established, carried forward by trained specialists across multiple generations, did the final and most demanding transmissions occur, those dealing with the deepest principles of cosmic order and the nature of consciousness itself. There is in this sequence a kind of wisdom that transcends mere practicality. It reflects an understanding that advanced knowledge is not simply a collection of facts and techniques to be transferred from one mind to another. It is something that must be grown into, that requires preparation of the whole person and of the whole social fabric before it can be received and used responsibly. Now let the story slow a little, like a river widening as it approaches the sea. The concept of divine withdrawal represents one of the most compelling and recurring themes in all of Mesopotamian prophetic literature. These texts describe cyclical periods when direct intervention by advanced beings gradually gives way to phases of human autonomy, during which civilizations are called upon to integrate received knowledge and demonstrate their capacity for independent development. This withdrawal is consistently presented not as abandonment or punishment, but as a necessary and purposeful stage in human evolution, a testing period that follows predictable patterns tied to astronomical cycles. The prophecy of Marduk describes the god's exile from Babylon as an expression of this broader pattern of divine withdrawal, affecting all aspects of cosmic governance. During these periods, the tablets explain, direct communication between earthly and celestial realms becomes limited, compelling human civilizations to rely on their accumulated institutional knowledge rather than ongoing divine guidance. The prophecy frames this withdrawal not merely as a challenge, but as an opportunity. Civilizations that have successfully internalized cosmic principles during periods of direct instruction may demonstrate genuine understanding through the quality of their self-governance during periods of withdrawal. The astronomical markers associated with periods of divine withdrawal reveal their connection to long-term cosmic cycles spanning millennia. The tablets describe withdrawal as beginning when specific planetary configurations reach critical thresholds, particularly during periods when the outer planets occupy positions that reduce their stabilizing influence on the inner solar system. These astronomical conditions create what the texts describe as times of testing, when the divine stabilization that normally operates through active cosmic intervention becomes less direct, requiring earthly civilizations to provide their own maintenance of order. The duration of withdrawal periods varies considerably according to the scale of the cosmic cycles involved. Minor withdrawals, affecting specific regions or individual cultures, might last only decades or a few centuries. Withdrawals of intermediate scale could span a millennium or more, testing the resilience of entire civilizational traditions across multiple generations of human stewardship. And the most profound withdrawals, those connected to the largest scale cosmic cycles, might extend across thousands of years, during which the knowledge transmitted in earlier periods of direct contact would need to be preserved, adapted, and transmitted through entirely human institutions without ongoing external guidance. The tablets describe how these nested scales of withdrawal create layered testing conditions for human civilization, with local, regional, and global challenges arising simultaneously during periods of major cosmic transition. The criteria for divine return appear with remarkable consistency across many different Mesopotamian prophetic texts. The conditions that must be met before direct contact resumes include the restoration of proper astronomical knowledge, the maintenance of cosmic law through functioning human institutions, the preservation of essential technologies and cultural practices, and the development of a level of consciousness capable of safely receiving renewed contact with advanced intelligences. The texts emphasize clearly that divine return does not occur automatically after a fixed period of time, but depends genuinely on human achievement of these specific developmental milestones. Signs of approaching divine return are described in considerable detail across multiple tablets. These include an increased frequency of unusual astronomical phenomena, the appearance of individuals possessing unusual knowledge and capacities, the spontaneous rediscovery of technologies previously lost, and the emergence of social movements focused on cosmic awareness and spiritual development. These signs are described as cascading and accelerating as the return approaches, preparing human consciousness for a renewed and more direct form of contact with cosmic intelligence. The mathematical systems that the Sumerians developed to track these cycles represent, even in purely intellectual terms, one of humanity's most remarkable early achievements. The discovery of precession, the slow wobble of Earth's rotational axis that causes the apparent positions of stars to shift gradually over thousands of years, emerged from centuries of patient observation and meticulous record-keeping beginning in temple archives around 3500 BC. Unlike later civilizations that might treat precession as an interesting astronomical curiosity, the Sumerians grasped its profound implications immediately. Their texts describe precession not merely as stellar movement, but as the fundamental mechanism governing the great year, a complete cycle of cosmic seasons determining the rise and fall of civilizations, the appearance and withdrawal of divine influences, and the periodic transformation of consciousness itself. Tracking precession with mathematical precision demanded innovations in numerical notation that could handle calculations spanning tens of thousands of years. The base 60 system emerged from exactly this necessity, providing a mathematical framework of remarkable elegance capable of expressing the complex relationships between different astronomical cycles. The number 60 was not chosen arbitrarily. It divides evenly by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30, making it ideally suited for astronomical calculations involving multiple independent periodicities. The 25,920-year precession cycle divides neatly into 432 periods of 60 years each, while also maintaining elegant mathematical relationships with lunar, solar, and planetary cycles that the Sumerians encoded throughout their astronomical texts. The sophistication of Sumerian precessional calculations becomes apparent in tablets from Nippur and Babylon that track stellar positions across multiple millennia, recording not only the current locations of key stars and constellations, but their positions in earlier epochs and their predicted future locations, extending thousands of years beyond the date of the tablet's composition. The accuracy of these calculations, verified through modern astronomical software, demonstrates that Sumerian astronomers were working with observational data spanning far longer time periods than the few centuries typically assumed for ancient astronomical traditions. The choice of specific stars as markers for precessional calculation reveals the depth of Sumerian astronomical understanding. The four royal stars, Aldebaran, Antares, Regulus, and Fomalhaut, positioned approximately 90 degrees apart in the sky, served as the primary reference points for tracking the slow drift of the precessional axis across the celestial sphere. These stars were chosen not arbitrarily, but because their positions allowed the most precise measurement of the tiny annual shifts that accumulate over centuries into the vast sweep of the full precessional cycle. The tablets describe these four stars as the watchers of the cardinal directions, cosmic guardians assigned to mark the boundaries between the great celestial ages. Their gradual movement relative to the equinoctial points provided the primary observational evidence for the great year's progression, and their positions at any given moment served as a kind of cosmic clock face by which a trained astronomer could read the approximate stage of the current precessional cycle. Among the astronomical records, the Mulopin star catalogues reveal how Sumerian astronomers organized their understanding of precessional change through the concept of celestial ages corresponding to successive zodiacal constellations. Each of these ages lasted approximately 2,160 years, representing 1/12 of the complete precessional cycle, and was understood to bring distinct cosmic influences shaping human civilization during that period. The transition from one age to the next created periods of upheaval and transformation, lasting roughly 150 to 200 years, during which old cosmic influences waned and new ones gained strength. These transition periods were observed to coincide with the collapse of existing political systems, major movements of populations, technological innovations, and fundamental changes in religious and cultural life. The Sumerian understanding of planetary cycles extended far beyond positional observation to encompass deeply mathematical relationships between different planetary periods and their correlations with terrestrial events. Their astronomical texts document synodic periods, the intervals between successive oppositions or conjunctions of planets as viewed from Earth, with an accuracy approaching modern measurements. Mars's synodic period of 780 days, Jupiter's 399-day cycle, and Saturn's 378-day period appear throughout Sumerian astronomical calculations, understood not merely as individual curiosities, but as components of larger patterns that emerge from their mathematical interactions. The concept of great conjunctions occupied a central position in Sumerian cosmic theory, describing rare alignments of multiple planets occurring at intervals of centuries or even millennia. The tablets document how Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions repeat approximately every 19.86 years, but shift gradually through the zodiac due to precession, creating a 794-year cycle before returning to the same constellation. When this cycle coincided with specific positions of Mars, Venus, and Mercury, the resulting configurations created what the Sumerians called cosmic gates, periods when the ordinary barriers between different levels of reality became temporarily permeable, allowing for direct communication with divine intelligences and access to advanced knowledge normally inaccessible to ordinary human consciousness. The mathematical complexity of calculating these great conjunctions required sophisticated understanding of least common multiples and the capacity to track multiple periodicities simultaneously across extended time periods. Sumerian astronomical tablets demonstrate calculations extending across 36,000 years, encompassing multiple complete precessional cycles. to determine when specific planetary configurations would repeat with precision. These calculations reveal that certain cosmic alignments occur only once in many thousands of years, explaining the intense Sumerian emphasis on preserving astronomical knowledge across generations, so that no significant cosmic event would arrive unrecognized and unrecorded. The vast concept known as the Great Year represents, in many respects, the culmination of all Sumerian astronomical thinking. This vast 25,920-year cycle encompasses 12 cosmic ages, corresponding to the 12 constellations of the zodiac, each bringing its own distinct influences to shape human development during that period. The tablets describe how these cosmic seasons follow predictable patterns of growth, maturity, decline, and renewal, operating at scales far beyond individual human lifespans, but accessible to understanding through careful observation, mathematical analysis, and the patient accumulation of records across many generations. The Great Year concept emerged directly from the Sumerian observation that precessional changes correlate with long-term patterns in human civilization. The tablets document how technological innovations, cultural achievements, spiritual developments, and social transformations cluster around specific points in the precessional cycle, suggesting that cosmic influences operate according to discoverable principles rather than random historical accident. The spring and autumn equinoxes of the Great Year, occurring when the vernal equinox point reaches the beginning of Aries and Libra respectively, were understood to coincide with periods of maximum cosmic influence that trigger the most fundamental transformations in both consciousness and civilization. Let the thoughts grow quieter now. Let the mind rest, like a lamp whose flame is growing very still in still air. The predictive models that emerged from Great Year calculations found their practical application in the sophisticated omen literature that guided Mesopotamian decision-making for more than 3,000 years. This body of knowledge represents humanity's first systematic attempt to correlate observable natural phenomena with future events, creating comprehensive databases linking specific signs in the natural world with predicted consequences for human civilization. Unlike the broad cosmic cycles that operated across centuries and millennia, practical omen interpretation focused on immediate signs that could guide daily decisions, military campaigns, agricultural planning, and political strategies. Hepatoscopy, the careful examination of sacrificial animal livers for divinatory information, represented one of the most technically sophisticated forms of Mesopotamian omen interpretation. This practice emerged from the understanding that cosmic forces influencing large-scale events simultaneously manifest in the microscopic details of biological systems. The liver, considered in Mesopotamian physiology to be the seat of the life force, served as a particularly sensitive indicator of cosmic conditions at the moment of sacrifice. Trained specialists known as Baru spent decades mastering the reading of liver surfaces, memorizing hundreds of specific formations and their corresponding predictions. The technical precision required for hepatoscopy involved extensive and genuinely sophisticated anatomical knowledge. Clay liver models discovered at Mari and other ancient sites show that Mesopotamian practitioners mapped liver surfaces in extraordinary detail, identifying dozens of distinct regions and their significance for different categories of prediction. The caudate lobe indicated military matters. The right lobe addressed agricultural concerns. The gallbladder attachment provided information regarding royal succession and political stability. Variations in color, texture, size, and surface markings within each region generated thousands of possible combinations, creating a divinatory system of remarkable specificity and depth. Historical records from Assyrian royal archives document the practical effectiveness of hepatoscopic predictions when performed by skilled practitioners during appropriate cosmic timing. Letters between rulers and their court specialists describe successful predictions of enemy military movements, optimal timing for siege warfare, and the identification of internal conspiracies, all accessed through careful examination of the liver of a sacrificial animal. These records suggest that hepatoscopy functioned not as mere superstitious ritual, but as a sophisticated and genuinely effective information-gathering technique that accessed patterns unavailable through conventional observation and analysis. The training required to become a competent baru, a fully qualified liver diviner, was among the most demanding in all of Mesopotamian scholarship. Students began their training in adolescence and typically required 15 to 20 years of dedicated study before being considered fully qualified to perform hepatoscopic readings for royal courts and major temples. The curriculum included not only the memorization of the hundreds of specific omen correlations associated with different liver formations, but also mastery of the astronomical knowledge required to determine the appropriate timing for each category of divination. A hepatoscopic reading performed under unfavorable planetary conditions was considered unreliable, regardless of the examiner's technical skill. The baru was therefore required to be simultaneously an expert anatomist, a skilled astronomer, and a sophisticated interpreter of symbolic correspondences between the microcosmic details of a single organ and the macrocosmic forces operating across the breadth of the heavens. This integration of multiple knowledge domains within a single practitioner reflects the Mesopotamian insistence that the world was a unified system in which no domain of knowledge could be properly understood in isolation from the others. Astronomical portents formed the backbone of the entire Mesopotamian predictive tradition. The Enuma Anu Enlil series, with its more than 7,000 tablets documenting the relationship between celestial events and earthly consequences, represents the accumulated observations of temple astronomers across 15 centuries and more of continuous work. These texts reveal that Mesopotamian priests understood astronomical phenomena not as isolated events, but as interacting components of complex systems, where multiple celestial influences combine to create specific earthly effects. Lunar omens occupied a central position within astronomical prediction, as the moon's rapid movement and constantly changing appearance provided frequent and detailed opportunities for observation and correlation. The tablets document how lunar eclipses in different constellations produce distinct forms of political upheaval, with eclipses in Leo affecting royal succession, eclipses in Scorpio triggering military conflicts, and eclipses in Aquarius bringing social revolutions from below. The duration and color of eclipses provided additional specificity. Blood-red eclipses lasting more than 2 hours predicted the fall of dynasties, while brief darkening events indicated temporary crises that would resolve within months without permanent structural change. Solar omens provided information about longer-term trends affecting entire civilizations, rather than immediate political developments. The tablets describe how solar eclipses visible from specific regions predicted major cultural transformations, technological innovations, or religious reforms that would unfold over several decades. The path of totality determined which areas would experience the most significant changes, while the eclipse's astronomical context, particularly the planetary configurations present during the event, indicated the nature of the transformations that would follow. The correlation between solar eclipse paths and subsequent historical developments reveals patterns that extend across multiple millennia of recorded history. Planetary omens addressed specific domains of human activity according to each planet's observed characteristics and its mythological associations. Venus omens focused on diplomatic relations, trade negotiations, and international alliances, reflecting the planet's dual nature as both morning and evening star. The tablets describe how Venus's maximum elongations from the Sun created optimal conditions for successful treaty negotiations, while inferior conjunctions warned of betrayal and diplomatic deception. Mars omens concentrated on military matters, with the planet's synodic cycle providing detailed guidance for the timing of military campaigns and the prediction of battle outcomes. Jupiter omens addressed matters of law, justice, and social order, with the planet's 12-year journey through the zodiac, providing a framework for understanding long-term social and political trends. Saturn omens dealt with the most fundamental civilizational questions, including technological development, cultural transformation, and the rise and fall of entire societies across generational timescales. Terrestrial signs provided immediate confirmation and additional specification of cosmic influences already indicated by astronomical observations. Earthquake omens were among the most significant, as seismic activity was understood to signal disruptions in cosmic energy flows that manifested through geological instability. Spring earthquakes indicated royal succession crises. Autumn earthquakes warned of foreign invasions. The direction of tremor motion also carried meaning, with north-south movement affecting royal authority and east-west tremors influencing trade and economic conditions. Meteorological anomalies, unusual animal behavior, and anomalous plant growth patterns all contributed additional layers to a comprehensive predictive system in which no aspect of the natural world was considered irrelevant to understanding the cosmic forces shaping human affairs. Biological omens interpreted the anomalous behavior of animals and unusual growth patterns in plants as indicators of cosmic influences affecting the natural world. The tablets describe how migratory birds arriving earlier or later than their accustomed season indicated disruptions in the seasonal patterns that governed agricultural productivity and economic stability. Mass deaths among domesticated animals warned of approaching epidemics or natural disasters that would affect human populations. The behavior of sacred animals kept within temple complexes provided particularly sensitive indicators of cosmic conditions, as these creatures were believed to be especially attuned to subtle shifts in the cosmic energy fields that permeated their environment. The sophistication of biological omen interpretation required extensive baseline knowledge of normal animal behavior and seasonal plant cycles, enabling trained interpreters to distinguish genuine anomalies from ordinary variation with the confidence of long experience. Sacred kingship represented, in this entire framework, the central institution through which cosmic order expressed itself in human civilization. According to Mesopotamian political philosophy, the king was not merely a political leader or military commander. He was a cosmic intermediary whose function was to maintain harmony between celestial and terrestrial realms through the meticulous performance of ritual obligations and the consistent observance of divine law. The tablets describe kingship as a cosmic principle that descended from heaven during specific astronomical conditions and required continuous renewal through ceremonies that aligned earthly governance with celestial mechanics. The annual renewal of kingship during the Akitu New Year festival represents one of the most elaborate and cosmologically significant ceremonial cycles in the ancient world. Over the course of several days of carefully choreographed ritual, the king of Babylon was required to surrender his royal insignia before the statue of Marduk, to confess before the god that he had neither neglected the temples nor harmed the citizens of Babylon, and to receive his authority back only after the high priest had confirmed, through a careful examination of omens, that the god had accepted the king's account and renewed his divine mandate for another year. This annual ceremony was not mere theatre. It embodied the Mesopotamian understanding that political authority was not a permanent possession of any individual, but a cosmic trust that required continuous demonstration of worthiness to maintain. A king who failed to perform the Akitu rituals correctly, or whose performance was marred by unfavorable omens, faced a genuine legitimacy crisis that his political enemies would not hesitate to exploit. The ceremony thus functioned simultaneously as a cosmic renewal, a political accountability mechanism, and a public demonstration of the alignment between earthly governance and celestial order that the entire civilization depended upon for its stability and prosperity. The concept of Namlugal, that divine force that operated through human representatives while remaining fundamentally cosmic in nature, appears throughout Mesopotamian political texts with remarkable consistency. Effective kingship required the ruler to maintain constant awareness of cosmic conditions and to adjust political policies in accordance with astronomical influences. Kings who disregarded cosmic timing or violated cosmic law were understood to lose their divine mandate, precipitating political instability, natural disasters, and social upheaval that would continue until proper cosmic order was restored through new leadership aligned with the principles governing the heavens. The sophisticated chronological systems that emerge from all of this accumulated astronomical wisdom represent humanity's first systematic attempt to map the rhythmic patterns governing civilizational rise, transformation, and renewal across vast temporal scales. The Mesopotamian understanding of historical time incorporated multiple overlapping cycles that created complex interference patterns determining when significant changes would manifest in human affairs. The tablets describe historical time as resembling a vast musical composition in which individual notes represent specific events, but the overall meaning emerges from harmonic relationships between different melodic lines operating simultaneously across multiple scales of cosmic time. The fundamental unit of Mesopotamian cosmic chronology was the Shar, a period of 3,600 years, corresponding to specific astronomical cycles and representing the complete lifespan of cosmic influences affecting human civilization. Each Shar encompassed 12 sub-periods of 300 years, each bringing distinct cosmic influences that shaped cultural development, technological advancement, and spiritual evolution during that era. The correlation between these calculated Shar cycles and the actual archaeological record reveals striking consistency. The transition between the third and fourth share of the current cosmic age, calculated to occur around 1200 BC, coincided precisely with the Bronze Age collapse that transformed civilizations across the entire Eastern Mediterranean. The concept of the Great Month provided an intermediate temporal scale between individual share periods and the complete Great Year of Precession, describing 2,160-year periods, during which specific cosmic influences reached maximum intensity before gradually yielding to different forces. Transition periods between great months, lasting approximately 150 to 200 years, were observed to coincide with dramatically accelerated rates of cultural and technological change compared to the more stable periods within each great month. Chronological calculations preserved in Neo-Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian archives indicate that Mesopotamian astronomers identified the period from approximately 800 BC to 600 BC as marking a particularly significant great month transition, during which multiple cosmic cycles would converge to fundamentally alter the relationship between divine and human consciousness, leading to new forms of spiritual knowledge and intellectual capability. The historical record confirms this prediction with remarkable precision. The period that modern historians call the Axial Age, roughly 800 to 200 BC, witnessed the nearly simultaneous emergence of transformative spiritual and intellectual traditions across geographically separated civilizations that had no direct contact with one another. Buddhism and Jainism in India, Confucianism and Taoism in China, Hebrew prophecy and Greek philosophy in the Mediterranean, and Zoroastrianism in Persia. The Mesopotamian tablets suggest these were not coincidental developments, but the manifestation of cosmic forces that reached critical intensity during this transitional period, creating conditions favorable for advanced spiritual and intellectual development across the whole of human civilization simultaneously. The concept of kairos, that idea of sacred or appointed time distinct from ordinary sequential time, formed the theoretical foundation for Mesopotamian temporal philosophy. While ordinary time, the mechanical progression of days, months, and years according to astronomical cycles, proceeded in its unchanging rhythm, Kairos moments identified specific windows when cosmic forces reached sufficient intensity to enable direct intervention in historical processes and accelerated access to higher knowledge. The identification of these sacred moments required sophisticated integration of astronomical, terrestrial, and biological indicators. The tablets describe formal procedures for recognizing Kairos periods, including detailed protocols indicating when cosmic conditions had reached appropriate intensity for ritual activity, major political decisions, and profound spiritual practice. The duration and intensity of Kairos periods varied widely according to the cosmic forces involved. Minor Kairos moments might last only hours or days. Major Kairos periods could extend across decades or centuries, creating broad windows for fundamental civilizational transformation that required coordinated action across multiple generations to fully manifest. The mathematical relationships governing Kairos timing follow harmonic principles. These moments occur when multiple periodic astronomical phenomena reach simultaneous peaks, creating constructive interference patterns that amplify cosmic influences far beyond their ordinary intensity. These harmonic convergences follow predictable mathematical laws, enabling their accurate calculation across extended historical time periods. The tablets describe how cosmic compression during Kairos periods affects the subjective experience of time itself, causing events to occur more rapidly and consequences to manifest more quickly than during stable periods. Thoughts appear to manifest more directly as physical events. Individual actions produce larger social consequences. Small differences in initial conditions generate dramatically different long-term outcomes. The texts warn that this acceleration demands greater precision in decision-making and behavior, as errors made during Kairos periods produce more severe and lasting consequences than similar mistakes made during ordinary time. The transmission of Mesopotamian cosmic knowledge through the centuries following the decline of the great Cuneiform civilizations represents one of history's most remarkable stories of intellectual survival. When the Neo-Babylonian Empire finally fell to the Persian armies of Cyrus in 539 BC, and when Greek forces under Alexander the Great swept through the region 2 centuries later, the physical infrastructure of Mesopotamian civilization was irrevocably transformed. Temples were repurposed, cuneiform gradually ceased to be written, and the scribal traditions that had maintained astronomical archives across 15 centuries slowly faded. Yet the knowledge encoded in those archives did not simply disappear. It found new vessels, new languages, new institutional forms through which it could continue its journey through time. Babylonian astronomers, working under Persian and later Greek patronage, translated their traditions into Greek mathematical frameworks, contributing directly to the astronomical achievements of the Hellenistic world. The Chaldean astronomers, whose reputation for astronomical skill became legendary throughout the ancient Mediterranean, were the direct inheritors of the Sumerian and Babylonian traditions, carrying their accumulated knowledge of planetary cycles, eclipse prediction, and precessional mathematics into a new cultural context, where it would eventually provide one of the foundations for modern science. Mesopotamian beliefs about the role of human consciousness in shaping the manifestation of prophesied changes emerged naturally from this entire framework. The tablets describe human awareness not as a passive observer of cosmic events, but as an active participant in the cosmic mechanisms that govern historical development. The collective consciousness of human civilization functions, in this understanding, as a crucial component in the systems through which cosmic forces express themselves through specific historical events. Human thoughts, emotions, and behaviors do not simply respond to cosmic influences from outside. They actively participate in determining how those forces manifest in concrete reality. The concept of collective human responsibility for cosmic balance appears throughout Mesopotamian prophetic literature. The tablets explain that cosmic influences operate as potential energies requiring conscious participation to manifest as specific historical events. Civilizations that maintain awareness of cosmic principles and align their collective behavior with cosmic law experience positive manifestations through cultural advancement, technological progress, and spiritual development. Civilizations that ignore these principles create conditions where cosmic forces manifest through corrective events designed to restore balance through transformation. This process is not described as divine punishment administered by a wrathful deity. It is described as an automatic correction operating according to natural law, as inevitable and as impersonal as the adjustment of a physical system disturbed from equilibrium. The practical applications of these consciousness cosmic interaction principles provided the foundation for Mesopotamian approaches to managing prophesied changes through coordinated human response. The tablets describe specific techniques for aligning collective consciousness with beneficial cosmic influences. Coordinated ritual observances timed to specific astronomical events. Educational programs designed to maintain cosmic awareness throughout the population, and governmental policies structured according to cosmic law rather than purely immediate material considerations. Civilizations that successfully implemented these approaches are documented as experiencing relatively smooth transitions through major cosmic changes, while those that ignored cosmic principles suffered severe disruptions. The influence of Mesopotamian cyclical time concepts on later religious and philosophical traditions reveals the profound depth of Sumerian cosmological thinking on subsequent human intellectual development. Jewish apocalyptic literature adopted Mesopotamian chronological frameworks, particularly the concept of cosmic ages, and predetermined transitional periods that would bring fundamental changes to human civilization. The concept of Jubilee years, of sabbatical cycles, of prophetic time periods measured in weeks of years, all carry the mathematical fingerprints of Mesopotamian astronomical calculation embedded within the theological language of a different tradition. Christian eschatological traditions inherited these Mesopotamian temporal frameworks through Jewish apocalyptic literature, adapting cyclical time concepts to linear salvation history while preserving essential chronological calculations. Islamic astronomical traditions preserved and refined Mesopotamian mathematical techniques For calculating cosmic cycles through the work of scholars who explicitly acknowledge their debt to the Babylonian and Chaldean astronomers who had preceded them. The mystery school traditions that emerged throughout the Mediterranean world during the Hellenistic period served as another crucial channel for preserving and transmitting Mesopotamian cosmic knowledge. The Eleusinian mysteries, Mithraic cults, and Hermetic traditions all incorporated elements of Mesopotamian cosmology, particularly concepts related to cyclical time, cosmic ages, and the relationship between celestial mechanics and spiritual development. The Hermetic corpus, drawing heavily from Mesopotamian sources, provided one of the most complete preservations of ancient cosmic science within Western esoteric traditions, describing the cyclical nature of cosmic development, the relationship between macrocosmic and microcosmic cycles, and the techniques for aligning human consciousness with cosmic forces to achieve spiritual advancement. The Renaissance rediscovery of ancient astronomical knowledge occurred primarily through the convergence of Islamic scholarship, Byzantine Greek texts, and Western esoteric traditions that had independently preserved different aspects of Mesopotamian cosmic science. Scholars synthesized these various transmission channels to reconstruct sophisticated understanding of cosmic cycles and their relationship to human civilization that approached the original Mesopotamian knowledge in scope and accuracy. The development of modern astronomy during the scientific revolution built upon foundations provided by these preserved Mesopotamian astronomical traditions. Even when the cosmic philosophical implications were set aside in favor of mechanistic models, the mathematical techniques for calculating planetary positions, predicting eclipses, and measuring precessional motion that enabled modern astronomical achievements derived directly from methods developed by Mesopotamian astronomers across 3 millennia of patient observation. The integration of ancient Mesopotamian chronological systems with contemporary astronomical understanding reveals striking correlations between the transitional periods these ancient tablets predicted and the conditions of the current world. The mathematical calculations preserved across these millennia of cuneiform records suggest that the present era corresponds to a major Great Month transition, comparable in scale to the Axial Age transformation of 600 BC. The tablets indicate this current transition began around 1800 AD and will reach maximum intensity during the early decades of the 21st century, creating conditions for fundamental changes in human consciousness, technology, and civilization that parallel the transformations documented during previous major transitions. The specific astronomical configurations occurring during the early 21st century align remarkably with Mesopotamian descriptions of cosmic conditions that herald fundamental changes in human consciousness and civilization. The rare planetary alignments, periods of increased solar activity, and unusual atmospheric phenomena documented by modern science correspond closely to ancient descriptions of signs indicating approaching transitional periods. The tablets describe these cosmic conditions as creating simultaneous opportunities for rapid advancement in human knowledge and capability, and increased potential for catastrophic disruption if civilizations fail to adapt appropriately to the changing cosmic influences that accompany them. The wisdom preserved in humanity's oldest written records continues to speak across the thousands of years that separate its authors from us. The Sumerians who first pressed those wedge-shaped marks into wet clay beneath the stars of ancient Mesopotamia understood themselves to be participants in something vast, something that extended far beyond the boundaries of any single civilization or any single age. They understood that cosmic cycles return, that each return brings both familiar challenges and new possibilities, and that the preparation of future generations to meet those challenges wisely is among the most sacred of human responsibilities. The legacy they left behind extends far beyond their historical achievements in writing, mathematics, and astronomical observation. It encompasses a fundamental and enduring insight that human consciousness does not merely observe cosmic processes from the outside, but participates actively in how those processes unfold through the medium of history. The wisdom they preserved in clay, in mathematical systems, in mythological narratives, and in astronomical tables continues to offer guidance for navigating the great cycles of change that shape the ongoing development of human civilization across the vast and spiraling reaches of cosmic time. And so, we come, gently, to rest at the edge of this vast and ancient story. The stars that Sumerian priests watched from the tops of their great temples are the same stars that shine above you now, patient and steady in the deep blue of the night. The cycles they measured with such care continue their slow turning, and somewhere in the quiet between one breath and the next, the wisdom of the oldest civilizations on Earth rests lightly in the air around you. Let the images of reed marshes and clay tablets and starlit ziggurats drift slowly away into the gentle dark. Let your thoughts become soft and slow, like clouds moving across a calm autumn sky. There is nothing more to understand tonight. There is only the deep, unhurried peace of sleep coming to find you. May your rest be quiet, and your dreams carry you gently through the night. Good night, and sleep well.